Welcome to AstroTwins Radio, your cosmic GPS for life, love, and everything written in the stars. We're Tali and Ophira Edut, the AstroTwins, here to decode the astrology of the moment and help you navigate your destiny like a pro. Well, March is certainly not coming in like a lamb. It's coming in like a lion. It's a week of March 2nd to 8th. Welcome to our weekly podcast. Tali here in Seattle.
Ophi in New York. And wow, we are in Mercury retrograde eclipse season, and it is behaving in the way it often does. No, we don't like to fear monger. So, but we do know that eclipses, the 2 week space between them, can definitely bring surprises, chaotic events, things being revealed that have been hidden. And well, that has definitely happened.
Yep, we had the first eclipse with the Year of the Fire Horse on February 17th. It was a solar eclipse in Aquarius, a new moon, ring of fire eclipse, Aquarius being the power to the people sign. And then on March 3rd, this Tuesday, the eclipse corridor closes with the second and final eclipse, which is at 12 degrees Virgo. It's a total lunar eclipse, total blood moon, blood worm moon, full moon in Virgo eclipse. So this has
Virgo,
felt like that bloody, revolutionary. We woke up this weekend to news that the U.S. and Israel had bombed Iran and killed the second Ayatollah Khomeini. We've been talking since the beginning of the year about Saturn and Neptune, February 20th. Saturn and Neptune hitting that 0 degrees Aries, that Aries point, the very first degree of the zodiac, Aries being the sign of war and combat. We've had a lot of disruptive transits since the year began, specifically in February, and they don't really end until the equinox. They start to slow down a bit.
On
not
March
completely,
20th,
though, because we still have Mars coming to its home sign of Aries this spring. But yeah,
April 9th,
there's a lot of war signatures in the air, in the stars this year. I think what's so hard and so confusing, I just want to start the conversation off with this, is that we're being asked to hold, and we have to hold, such a complex mix of feelings and thoughts and opinions because, we have family in Israel. We have who are on all ends of the political spectrum in their views. We have clients all across the Middle East who are both celebrating and terrified simultaneously. There's the Ayatollah caused death and harm and fear and ruled with an iron fist. And Iran funded the proxies of Hezbollah and Hamas. And they were behind a lot of the things that, have created upheaval for Palestinians and Israelis alike, people in Lebanon as well. Just civilians are hurting. But I think what's also so hard is, while there may indeed be cause for celebration, ding dong, the witch is dead, the fact that Trump and Netanyahu, two people who within their own countries have been basically borderline, if not crossed over to autocrat, who many people compare to just corrupt autocratic leaders, are now going to ride the wave of glory for this. And it's just so complicated. Here we and that feels very much like Saturn and Neptune together too. Like Saturn being that heavy-handed rulership and Neptune the illusion and delusion and confusion. I don't know. What do you think, Ophi, about
Yeah, I
that?
mean, I agree. So, and I've been talking to friends who are Iranian, living outside of Iran, but not necessarily in the US. And, you know, just hearing, yeah, there's a lot of exactly that kind of confusion, such extremes, even, and US Iranians too, like 47 years. It was 1979, April 1st, 1979, when the Islamic Republic overthrew the Shah and stepped in. So, and we ourselves were really impacted by that because the Iran Iraq War of 1980 sent thousands of people from Baghdad, Iraq, seeking refuge in the United States, and many came to Detroit, our hometown. So we were in, I don't know, second or third grade or something, and all of a sudden we had all these classmates who were Chaldean. Those were, many of them were Christian Arabs from Baghdad, Iraq. It's a very unique culture that those of us who grew up in Detroit are familiar with. Outside of Detroit, a lot of people don't even know what Chaldean culture is or haven't really heard of it. So,
And it was interesting
uh,
because we had more in common with them in terms of the food we ate. Our dad being an Israeli immigrant and customs in terms of, temperament and
and he came over because he married our mom. So he had been actually a refugee to Israel from Bulgaria in the 1940s, and then met our mom in college, and then moved to the United States where our grandparents were Holocaust survivors had settled. So there weren't really a whole lot of Israelis in Detroit at all. It's not exactly a hub. And so, we grew up going to stores with Arabic signage, et cetera. But I mean, Iran is not an Arab country. It's Indo-European, and original religion there is Zoroastrianism. They speak Farsi, and we didn't have a huge Iranian population in Detroit, but we had a large Iraqi population. And now I live in New York, where there was a large Iranian population, and then also in LA. So
we
there's
did
a lot of
know there were a number
celebration.
of Persian Jews
Yeah, for
in
sure.
Detroit, the Mizrahi community. We had some there who,
Yeah, well, for sure. The ones we did know were Jewish, interestingly. So we Iran and Iraq have been definitely part of our lives, and the people of both heritages have been part of our lives since our childhoods. So, um, we decided, instead of doing hot takes on something that is so complex, I mean, the Middle East is so complicated, and it's being looked at through a Western lens so often, which in some ways is justified and others missing a
well,
lot.
yeah.
Yeah, so we decided to this week look at it through the astrology of it, and we are working on and hoping to have a special guest who can speak to it for, so that will probably be later this week. And I'll spare the details until we confirm them, but
Yeah.
just like we spoke to Brandy Moorcomb, who's in Minnesota, and a lot of you guys said you really liked that episode and felt healed by it. We've always believed in trying to go to the source and get as much self-representation as possible. While even that is complicated because there is no one
That's what I was
source.
just about to say.
Yeah,
Like there's as many, and we've been
which is
saying
so
this all
eclipse.
along. I mean, we try to be transparent and honest as, it's a very complicated time to be from any, of any heritage in the Middle East, whether they've been there for one generation or more than you can count. If you're at all immersed in that part of the world, if you have family there, it's excruciating for many of us. There's this pressure to pick a certain side or align with quote unquote your people, but then your people have so many diverse opinions within them. So,
And
we're
terrible perpetrators and
as well
just
as everyday heroes and humanitarians too. The Ayatollah who was doing horrible things to people in Iran, keeping them under an iron fist, no rights for women. You can even have a pet dog. That was his recent thing, just like this iron fisted indoctrination, killing protesters, thousands of protesters just this year, was funding Hamas. And I think some people confuse Hamas with, the Palestinian people whose rights were stripped away? Or they confuse Zionists with the Israeli settler movement who has, just goes in and violently land grabs from Palestinians. Um, there's so many, we want so much to simplify everything. And right now, Mercury is retrograde in the most complex sign of all, which is Pisces.
and
Um,
Mars is going into Pisces March 2nd, Monday, until April 9th as well. So more of the Pisces illusion and confusion right at the eclipse moment. So, if
right.
we have a
Looking at
common
something.
enemy of
Yeah.
humanity, it seems to be dogma, because everyone who is perpetrating these horrific anti-humanity crimes is has bought into this dogma and believes they're right. And the everyday people are always the ones who are suffering. That's why I'm really, really just it seems trivial by comparison, but here in New York, we just had another blizzard. And I was watching our mayor, Zoran Mamdani, and how he treated it. He paid people $30 an hour to be emergency snow shovelers, which was a great rate for, I think it used to be $19. He upped the pay immediately. He keeps bringing the issue back to the people, affordable housing, etc. So he's a mere mortal. And so one of the things we also have to be careful of, which we're seeing, is like exalting a new leader.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about the astrology of this in a minute, but the Shah was in power before the first Ayatollah. His son, who hasn't been in Iran in nearly 50 years, is wanting to step into power and be a democratic leader. But there's this, I'm sure, in the heat of all this emotion, there's this desire to like now make him this hero, the savior. And we said this at the beginning of this one year, and you're the unbridled spirit. We have to be the leaders. We are the ones we've been waiting for, the Hopi prophecy, the saying, waiting for another supreme leader or savior or a human to
Mayor.
step in. And yeah, even a mayor, like, at some point, I mean, some people are already pissed at Mamdani for some of the things he's done. So
Yeah.
it's
His statement on Iran was controversial. He's like
mhm.
the US doesn't need to be in another war, and which is true. But tell that to the people of Iran who've had to live under this the regime of two ayatollahs for the last 47 years after.
Yeah,
Sure,
or
they
who
lived under a
haven't been able to
dynasty
go
with
to
the
their
Shah, but
homes
yeah,
or
they
see
haven't.
their family who've been
That's just
stuck there. We don't know what that's like.
And I
We
saw that
just don't.
Israelis and Iranians have been celebrating together
In
in
London, they were like
London.
dancing in the street with their flags, which is once
Yet
again,
another layer of
no eclipse,
complexity.
Pisces, like what is real, what isn't. And that's why we decided that we're going to look at the astrology of what are the patterns, because ultimately as astrologers what we do is pattern recognition based on the astronomical data that we know. So it's kind of interesting because we do occasionally read the comments. Our team always does, that you guys leave on the podcast. And there haven't been many, but there were a couple of people who were saying, why are you getting political or this and that? And we've come to expect that. But I just really want to underscore that this podcast for us is a place to connect this planet with the rest of the planets, as above, so below. For people who think that you can just separate astrology and what's happening, I don't know, in the stars. I'm not really sure what it is that they're hoping that we'll talk about, but this space is where we are going to be sharing, we will be sharing our opinions
And our brand
uh,
values as
and our
well.
brand value. Yeah.
And our
And
values and our work has always been very much about humanity, a safe and free space for all to express themselves. And it's not political, it's not left. So I think a lot of times, like what has been called conservative is a repressive energy. You can be as conservative for yourself as you want, but the conservatism that then encroaches on other people's freedom to live their truth, to be gay or trans or feminist or, you know, straight edge or normie or whatever you want to be. You can be whatever the hell you want to be. But when your identity is wrapped up in repressing another person's, you're not a conservative, you're a bigot. And so we have done work since our teens. We published a magazine called Hues, which is for Heroes Emerging Sisters, with a group of women. An original DEI, if you will, but it was a size positive, intersectional feminist magazine that was in the 1990s. And we didn't have a lot of agreement, a lot of support in the mainstream for it, but boy, you know,
and we
did the
fought to get
world
it
need
on
it?
newsstands
We
too. I
did.
mean, I spoke to a major newsstand distributor back in the 90s. Magazines were on, they still have them in New York, but there were a lot more of them, just those little stands where you buy a pack of gum and a magazine, a newspaper, whatever. And I spoke to a man who told me ethnics don't sell on the newsstand. Those were his exact words. And I remember him going like, I'm not calling you baby ugly. I'm just telling you ethnics don't sell on the
Remember
newsstand. I mean,
that.
we heard
The
some
things we
crazy
heard,
stuff.
I mean, the shamelessness of it. And Hughes was born out of us
We got
hearing
it
some
on the
crazy
newsstand.
stuff from the publisher of Sassy magazine, where I actually, Tali, won the reader produced issue contest. They used to let readers come and take over an issue and replace the staff. So when I was 18, I won and I got flown my first trip to New York to be the art director for the what was it, December 1991 issue. And the editorial staff was incredible, amazing. They've gone on to do incredible work. Shout out and gratitude to Jane Pratt and Andrea Lynette and yeah,
Marjorie Engel,
Marjorie
Christina
Engel,
Kelly,
Kim
Kim France.
France, I know, Mary Kay, and Mary Schilling, her mom. But yeah, amazing, amazing women. But the publisher was just the same. Like we had one of the first I think maybe the first multicultural cover. It was
Mm-hmm.
originally just going to be a black woman and a Filipina woman as the models, but we were told in that editorial meeting in 1991 that, we would alienate the readership in the South and like,
What they
so
were really afraid of, this was the publisher, and the publisher of magazines was responsible for the financial and ad sales that drove the magazine's profitability. And what would happen is that evangelical Christian groups in the South would stage mass boycotts against brands and publications that they considered what they'd call woke today in the derisive way. So they were always afraid of that.
yeah, so we
And
what the
they
one of
had a
the
black model
editors,
on the cover.
yeah.
Yeah, they'd put the magazine in a plastic bag covered by an ad insert,
Oh
actually.
my
So
God, that's right. Well,
yeah,
we wound up putting one of the women who was actually the editor. She was chosen to be the managing editor, and she happened to look like Michelle Pfeiffer's teenage daughter and was
mm-hmm.
totally woke. But she slipped in as a blonde-haired, blue-eyed, third on the cover, and yeah. So from the that and having to have everybody wear a sample size to like our inner, feminist warriors were born. I mean, they were already there all along. But, anyways, this is just to say that we have a deep, deep commitment to diversity and
Representation.
representation, and astrology is not a far cry from that for us at all. Like,
It's how we got into
everybody has a
astrology.
unique yeah, it's like this is, well, not only right because we would talk about it with, it was the unifying force among our staff. Like, we came from all cultures, backgrounds, walks of life, but we would get into our moon signs, so we used to have to look them up in books back
Astrology
then.
is like one way that you can talk about differences without the identity politics. Always, I mean, now more they do, but like at the time, it was like we could put those aside and talk about kind of the archetypes and the energetics of your soul with, who you were and how you were raised factored in. But it gave this like universal unifying thing. So
And also a
that's
shout out
kind of
to
the
our co-publisher Diane Logwood, Dr. Diane Logwood too. I want to, who went on to
mhm,
be a professor, and she's still in
doing a lot of that
Michigan,
work.
loves it there. And so, yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. And, this background of ours, I guess we just wanted to help you understand if you're someone who's listening and is like not understanding why we take a stand on certain things. Well, it's how we were raised. And we just happened to come of age half Middle Eastern in the Midwest, but Middle Eastern in a way that was different than all of our Middle Eastern neighbors who came as refugees while we were in elementary school, who we grew up with. And then, just never feeling like we fully fit in anywhere, wanting to have a space where anyone who feels like a misfit can feel safe and included and empowered and free. And what we've come to realize is that's what everyone kind of wants at the
Everyone
end of the
feels like a
day.
misfit, honestly.
Yeah, we went on to do some transformational work in our 20s and late 20s and 30s, and um, found ourselves in groups of people from all walks of life, which is always our comfort zone. And um, just those human themes that we all share. So it's just sad that some people feel disenfranchised and disempowered go the route of feeling like they have to take something away from other people or deny other people. And this is where, again, I come back to dogma.
Hmm.
Dogma is the common enemy, especially when it's religious, if you ask me, because and this is again faith is such so is and spirituality are we honor those for people. It's the dogma when your way is right and the other person's way, the other person is going along, not hurting anyone, living their life the way they want to live it, doing no harm is repressed or suppressed in some way. And we're moving, like we are moving into the age of Aquarius where that individuality is going to be more important than ever for people to express. So, you know, with that context, we really want to say astrology has been a key to unlock a celebration of individuality where you can be you, I can be me, and it's more about curiosity, like, oh, how interesting that you're that way. So we're going to do a little astrologizing
Yeah.
of
And let's
the
just
moment.
say we are going to do that, but like expressing our values is really important. I don't think you can have a company in this charged time and not express your values, especially as we've seen so many companies bend the knee, cancel DEI, fire
Mhm.
people for AI, like
Which is an
just
interesting
align
thing that
themselves with
happened
the, yeah, but
this
also
week.
align themselves with, yeah, I was just going to say with the Anthropic, but and aligning themselves with the Epstein or getting busted in the Epstein files. Like, who are you? It's really important, and that's not even just politics, like to just label stuff politics. No, these things are happening. And values versus dogma, there can be a fine line sometimes, but our, our values are about expansiveness, acceptance, and openness. And yes, were you going to talk about anthropic opening?
Yeah. I mean, I
Yeah.
think when you get passionate about your values, it can land as a little dogmatic sometimes. But
And sure, we can. We're
I,
sages. Well,
we're sages, but it's, yeah, I think we all know the difference. But, this is a time to be careful about when that line blurs, I suppose. So we do take that to heart as well. If there's a valid bit of
yeah,
feedback, like,
like we're struggling as much as everyone else is to figure out where to land when it comes to certain aspects of this because you know, as Jews, there's 15 million of us left on the planet. Our community is small. And if we're not united, we also could face danger again, or we do. There's anti Semitism. It's real, it's out there. But we're also seeing, you know, people in our culture doing things. Jeffrey Epstein, for example, BB, that we are so horrified by. So it's like we simply
well, it's that
have to
tricky.
talk about our values beyond our identity too, and that's what we love. So that's where we're going here. We're explore This is as much an exploration of our identity and values and our time here on the planet, and hopefully that'll inspire you guys to ask questions too. Ask.
I think Jews right now are having to figure out what our values are apart from dogma and
Yep.
apart from some nationalism and owning, you know, what our history has included in the 20th century and like the good, the bad, the horrible, and it's been the
The
20th
21st
century.
century too. Tend to turn on the light.
Yeah,
Literally turn on the light. Let's let some light in. So yeah, we were gonna say, keep almost saying like Anthropic, Claude, one of the AI alternatives to Chat GPT out there. Weren't the people who started it, the brother and sister, weren't they originally? They worked at for
an
open
open
AI.
AI. Yeah. So one of the things that's happened, Mercury went retrograde. Mercury rules information systems, data, technology, and we have an eclipse on March 3rd, Tuesday, 3/3 in Virgo, which also has to do with data and some surveillance as well. So both of those things that are happening right now, we're in the energy of Mercury retrograde and this eclipse. And one of the things that really was a reflection of that was uh, a real feud. I don't want to even call it a feud. It was um, OpenAI took a defense contract, and Anthropic, which does Claude, refused to. Um, the Defense Department wanted to have AI and autonomous weaponry um, used, and Claude, the founders of Anthropic, said no, the technology is not developed enough for that to be safe. So they refused to agree to the terms of the Defense Department of War, renamed ridiculously by Gemini Pete Hegseth. And Sam Altman, the triple Taurus, stepped in and scooped up the contract himself. No surprise there.
And Pete Hegseth actually said that anybody that, like nobody within that has a contract with the Department of Defense should use Anthropic. So they took a major hit financially, but like, which yeah, that's probably really terrible for the company. And wow, how, and not like Anthropic. I hear they are in bed with Palantir. It's not like their like hands are clean, but to see a company turn down a lucrative contract based on their values, shouldn't be such a big deal. But as we've watched one university, law firm, corporation,
Cave.
tech company just basically go into this mob boss, kiss the ring stance. Since the inauguration, and it's just been really
It's been
it, it's
disheartening.
it's weird. It's like we'll take the crumb we can get.
Yeah. So that seems really on brand with some of the things we'd be seeing between an eclipse and Aquarius too, which rules
Hmm.
technology, and then Virgo, which is techie and
Also, your
media.
virtues, also what you, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So on Tuesday with the total lunar eclipse, blood moon shining the spotlight. So for people who are new or just learning what eclipses are, there's a lot of fear mongering out on especially social media about eclipses. A lunar eclipse happens. I feel like a lunar eclipse is more abrupt than a solar one. Solar eclipses happen at new moon, so they do kind of push us into this new terrain. But then the full moon, the lunar eclipse, is when something that's been hidden comes to light. So a lunar eclipse, why it's called a blood moon, is because the earth is exactly between the sun and the moon. So you see the reddish brown shadows of the earth reflected onto the full moon. And that's why it looks red. But it used to freak the ancients out, and they would fear the eclipses. And there are a lot of astrologers today. It's kind of low hanging fruit. They love to milk the eclipse for some fear mongering clicks, I suppose. And it's
But
not
hey, it's
untrue. It's
not
not
all to get.
untrue that things don't get crazy, because eclipses come in and abruptly
And
change
also
things.
that things don't get hidden, because
Yes.
this is also turning the attention away from the Epstein files that,
Yeah.
have been real, like the horrors that have come out. And now we're all paying attention to, oh my God, it's a Middle Eastern war in Iran. And we don't know also if just because the Ayatollah was killed doesn't mean there's going to be a regime change.
Right.
Iran has to, by law, appoint its next supreme leader within a very short time period. And there's still a supreme leader which means this is not
Right.
democracy here that's going in. And, of course, we can't come in, voice that Western point of view. There's a tendency to want to do that. Well, why not? But, you know, so again, we don't know. Mercury remains retrograde in shadowy Pisces all the way until March 20th. And Mars is in Pisces from this Monday until April 9th, which I see as kind of the secretive, esoteric, veiled, illusory energy operating like these secret deployments with Mars, the planet of war. Um, so it's going to be kind of hard to even know. I think we're going to feel the
The
ripples of this
illusion and the
for a while.
confusion. Yeah, like people are celebrating, but then you know, they're in the immediacy of the emotions, which is very much eclipse season. Like eclipse season heightens everything. So lunar eclipse, it's like everything is charged. And I do recall like it's almost like when eclipse season ends, there's this like hangover feeling of like, oh my God, we were so freaking intense. Like everything is intensified.
And
So
Friday, Venus, the planet of peace, is moving into Aries for the rest of March, the sign of war. So that's kind of
yeah,
a balancer that happens. We also talk about that when
we had that
Mars goes
last
into
year, but it was
Libra.
retrograde. Yeah.
Yeah, that happened last year too. So this is kind of interesting though. Mars, which is a planet of war, is going to compassionate Pisces, while Venus, the planet of peace, is going into Aries, the sign of war and combat and independence and sovereignty this week. So
And
maybe
over the
that kind of,
weekend, it's going to
yeah.
meet up with Neptune and Saturn. On Saturday, we've got Venus and Neptune together, which could be a moment of hope and peace. But on Sunday, it's going to meet up with Saturn. So, where we're going to maybe get this reality check as
Or some
well.
treaties, or some, I mean, that
Yeah,
we
maybe
may
some things
see
could be
next weekend to
formalized.
the
Yeah.
new. Well, we found this thread when we were digging into the history of the regime changes in Iran corresponding with the lunar nodes in Pisces and Virgo, which is where they are this year until July. So the lunar nodes are these 2 points in the sky that are connected to the eclipses, and they are in opposite signs. We have the south node, also called the descending node, and the north node, or which is, so the south node is where kind of our karmic lessons are swirling, the things we need to upgrade and update collectively. And the North Node is the new language we need to learn or how it's getting processed. So these cycles last for 18 months. And every 18 to 20 years, they'll repeat. So they don't come around but once every couple decades. They will come around every 10 years, but they'll be in opposite signs. So,
Yeah.
right now, since January 11th, 2025, and all the way until July 26th, 2026, we have the South Node, that karmic energy in Virgo, and the North Node, the new language in Pisces. So Virgo and Pisces are associated with religious doctrine, laws, ethics. Virgo can be very righteous, and Pisces can be very esoteric and spiritual and
And hidden, like kind of like all
mysterious.
yeah, hidden, but also like sort of hidden operations,
Yeah,
military
and they
things,
also, Virgo
tunnels.
is, I mean, we've seen this show up in a lot of different ways. Virgo and Pisces are also associated with wellness and health and healing. So
There's
when,
also this like fact versus disinformation. I mean, not to give this any airtime more than this, but even like the Candace Owens Bride of
oh, right.
Charlie expose about Erica Kirk that's coming out now in this Mercury retrograde eclipse corridor too. It's like once again confusing. Like
Well, yeah, there's been
Candace
so many.
Owens is terrible, but wait, she's exposing things about someone terrible. Like it's just this like I don't even you don't even you're like thank you, but also like can
I
they
will admit,
both go away?
I watched the first one, and it was just real. I was expecting, I don't know what I was expecting, but it was just her just trying to piece together this like true crime podcast. It was, but I
I
did
mean,
learn,
she's
here's something interesting that Erica Kirk, I did learn some things and I confirmed them. So Erica Kirk, she's Erica Franze and she's always talking about being Swedish. Well, her mother is actually Syrian and Lebanese.
for
And
real.
yeah, yeah.
Wow.
So she's actually half Middle Eastern. She also talks about her mom being a single mother, but Candace found that, indeed her mother was listed as like being married, I think 4 times, and her father and a stepfather, like her stepfather had a picture with her and her Erica and her mom in Erica's yearbook, and Erica's dad was around and helping to raise her. So she's like trying to ride the single mother hype, but she was actually had like a bonus dad in Candace's
Well,
work.
they
Is
are opposite signs too. Speaking of opposites, Candace Owens is a Taurus, Erica Kirk is Scorpio. So opposite signs can be very polarized and polarizing, as we're seeing with the nodes and
Yeah,
Virgo
and
and
we'll get to
Pisces too.
we also I
Yeah.
mean Mercury crazy stuff this week and a lot of Mercury retrograde things also so Netflix was supposed to make a deal with Warner Brothers and then Paramount one up them and Netflix wasn't able to match that. So now Warner Brothers and Paramount are going to merge. So we've got another billionaire there, Larry
Fight
Ellison and
Dance,
his son.
Monopoly.
Yeah. So HBO, CNN, like, is that going to become the next CBS? Like, it's all like the billionaires just keep getting more and more powerful right now. It's really disheartening, but Leo South Node's coming, and that's going to
Aquarius
be
North
interesting
Node, yeah.
with halfway
So
through the
one,
year. But let's go back. Okay, let's fight. We keep like,
yeah.
we're going to talk
So
about this. I
we
swear.
we did some tracing of the leadership of Iran and how it lined up with patterns and transits over time that are happening now. So Mohammad Reza Pahlavi was the Shah from 1941 to 1979.
That was a
So
dynasty. There were two. His
yeah,
his father actually, I think it was 1925. He became he's formed a dynasty and became the dynastic ruler of then Persia. And then his son was a Scorpio. Yeah, didn't he came up with the name Iran, right? He renamed Persia
yeah,
Iran.
which is Aryan, because they are Indo-European, Zoroastrian originally. So, um,
Interesting.
yeah, but Pahlavi, who was the Shah from 41 to 79, 1941 to 1979, was ousted by the Islamic Republic, by the first Ayatollah. So,
Ayatollah Khomeini. Yep.
yeah. So Mohammad Reza Pahlavi became the Shah on September 16th, 1941. And what is very interesting astrologically, the nodes were in Pisces and Virgo, flipped from where they are, both at the beginning of his tenure and the end. The South Node was at 22 degrees Pisces in 1941, and the South Node was at 16 degrees Pisces in 1979 when he was ousted. So, and in 1941, September 16th, Uranus was at 0 degrees Gemini. So that
That's where it will
cycle
be
is a,
on April
yeah,
25th of this year. Hmm.
yeah. So Uranus was in Gemini from 1941 to 49. And then it did not come back again until this past July 7th, until November 7th. It was at 0 degrees Gemini. Then it backed into Taurus for its final run through Taurus, which is affecting everything in the Middle East because a lot of those countries are Taurus ruled, including Israel. And Uranus will be at 0 degrees Gemini again, April 25th of this year. That's when it's settling into Gemini until 2033 for the first significant time since the 1940s. So the Shah came into power 1941, Uranus 0 degrees Gemini, and the nodes opposite places, because the Pisces was the south node, Virgo was the north node, and now they're flipped.
Well, we should say that under the Shah, there was still a dynastic authoritarian regime, but there was a much more quote unquote westernized way of living. People had freedom to dress as they wanted and travel and educate themselves. Women were allowed to do that. And, it was probably, still a lot of privatization going on and
And
wealth being in the hands.
unrest,
Yeah.
really grew. So he fled in 1979. April 1st, 1979 was when Ayatollah Khomeini, Ruhollah Khomeini, the first Ayatollah, came into power. And the nodes were, again, South Node in Pisces, Virgo, North Node. Now, that only happens every 18 to 19 years. So it was kind of a 1920-ish year cycle, repeating again. And that was when the sun was in Aries. So Aries is significant right now because Saturn and Neptune just went into Aries late January and mid-February. We had just had the great reset of Saturn and Neptune in Aries together February 20th. So an Aries ruled country or leader, which we're going to get to in a minute, would be impacted by that. So the Islamic Republic of Iran was formed April 1st, 1979, when the first Ayatollah came to power. Now, the Shah had been a Scorpio. This Ayatollah was a Libra, the first one, September 24th. And interestingly, he was even Time Magazine's Man of the Year in 1979. He was into poetry and literature. People
Mysticism
clearly,
too. And he made a
yeah,
lot of false promises when he was, campaigning, saying
yeah,
that there would be places for women to grow. And then he became very hard line when he
yeah. He
got
was a
into
Shiite
power.
cleric, and he actually, he was anti-Western, anti-communist. Pretty quickly, the Iranian militants seized the U.S. embassy in Tehran, and they created tensions, hostages. The Iran-Iraq War that lasted from 1980 to 88 broke out September 1980. So, this is what happened then.
The first
The
Ayatollah.
first
But he
Ayatollah,
was
he's a
only,
Libra.
interestingly enough, in power for 10 years. So when the nodes came back again, flipped to Virgo and Pisces, he had a heart attack, he died, and then his successor was named, who is Ali, who's the one who just was killed by Israel and the United States in the attacks. Ali Khamenei with a, similar name, not Khomeini, Khamenei. And he's an Aries too. So here comes that
Yeah,
Aries once
April
again,
19th.
April
Yep, he was in
19th
Aries. And
on the
when the first Ayatollah died on June 3rd, 1989, we literally had just finished the Virgo Pisces nodal cycle, and the North Node was at 29 degrees Aquarius, the very first degree that would go into. And that is happening for the second time since then only. July 26th, 2026. We've got 29 degrees Aquarius North Node, and then the North Node is going to be in Aquarius for a year and a half. So we have another repeating cycle there. And interestingly, Ali Khamenei had a 36-year tenure as the Ayatollah until he was killed on February 28th. But that was the year of the snake, also 1989. So he went through three snake year cycles and was killed, assassinated right at the end of a snake year with Saturn, and he was born with Saturn in Aries and Uranus in Taurus.
1939. He was born
Oh
in
yeah, he was
1939.
born April 19th, 1939, when Uranus was in Taurus and Saturn was in Aries, and that is happening again now for probably the first time
He was in
since
his
then.
third Saturn return and he was killed.
Yeah,
And he
but
was,
Saturn hasn't been in Aries at the same time as Uranus and Taurus since
oh,
the
wow,
late
that's so true.
1930s. Let's circle back to the charts of Iran. So, what's happening now is the son of the Shah, who's the crown prince, also a Scorpio like his dad, Reza Pahlavi. So, his dad was a Scorpio who was the original Shah who fled in 1979. So his son, who was born October 31st, 1960, lives in the US, has lived in the US for the last nearly 50 years, um, is looking to become the leader of Iran now. And his Aries daughter is campaigning for him too. And, it's all like one of those things too where I'm like, I don't even know what to believe because it's giving a little bit of the Trumpism and that sort of thing. So we have a lot more to look into before I have anything to say about it. But it's very Mercury retrograde, probably to see someone from the former dynasty wanting to come in and create democracy. And I think we're all feeling like we don't know what to believe, who to believe. We certainly don't believe anyone's promises before they're appointed or elected anymore. It's like,
Yeah. We don't. It's like you
yeah,
just don't even, well, and that's why people have to demonstrate, not just speak their values out loud, but I mean, when you say something out loud, you, and you don't walk your talk, you lose people's respect and trust. You have no integrity. I did read that many of the grandchildren of the first Ayatollah are actually outspoken reformists.
Ayatollah or
Yeah,
Shah.
no, the Ayatollah.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
So, I mean, new blood is coming. I don't know if it's generational or just a matter of age. People do tend to get close-minded and stubborn historically
I
over
thought our
time.
generation, I thought Gen X was going to
I
be
know.
different. And I'm just looking at so many,
The
the,
manosphere has disproven that.
the,
I just do think that this year is still, Felicia Bender, our numerologist who writes for Astrostyle and for our book, talks about the 8-9-1 year cycle being the most intense. So in numerology, we get what's called a universal year when you add up the numbers of the year. So 2024 added up to 8, 2025, the digits added up to 9, and 2026, we get a 10, which we reduce to a single digit of 1. And, 8 is like this power, authority, like intensification. 9 is when everything kind of shatters and falls apart. And 1 is when we're scrambling to figure out how to rebuild. We want new, we want shiny, but we don't quite know what to do. 2 is more about harmony, cooperation,
alliances.
alliances. And I want to say, oh, this year is going to be, finally, but we're deep in the change. We have to stay alert. We have to stay aware. I do feel though, and a lot of people have been saying that they feel emboldened and back in their center again since the fire horse year began. So, like, this is a time where courage and connection is needed, whatever that looks like for you. It doesn't have to be, for some people, the courage is like supporting someone who, like one of my neighbors works at a school for immigrant, where the kids are mostly immigrants. And she said they have a whole network of drivers so that the parents don't have to leave to take their kids to school. I mean, people are organizing in those ways. Like, it's like it's such a head, a mind fuck, because it's like all of a sudden global making people worry about World War III and global alliances just takes a spotlight away from what's happening here in the United States with ICE, with the Epstein files, and people become overwhelmed and scared, and they think, oh, we need this strong man to protect us on the world stage. And it's this posturing, this patriarchal posturing. Um, and but it doesn't, it's what I keep finding is like, I mean, that happened with Maduro too. It's like, oh my God, oh, what's gonna happen? And then an Elmen show, and it's like, like my own mind, my own mental conditioning of like growing up as a Gen Xer, and like it's just like the men and their shoot 'em up, bang bang, like just acts of might, acts of war. I've been just, of course, I've been deep scrolling, and I'm hearing these men speak at length about like the strategy of why they got Maduro first and how Israel weakened Hezbollah and Hamas and the Operation Rising Lion that happened. Like there was a whole strategy, like wartime strategies exist, and I don't like to think about them. And it's just like, do we now? And this is just a question I'm asking myself, which I hate to have to ask myself. It's like, do I need to read The Frickin' Art of War? Do I need to, with this Aries energy? Do we have to accept? Like, I don't like to live in a world where war exists. It doesn't fit with my Atlantean, Pleiadian soul, but there's people out here who live for war, who think war strategies. And there are people out here like these regime leaders, both claiming democracy or not, who, for them, it's just a giant power chess game. And so, like, that's a question that
Well, you could say, the old saying, know thy enemy, but that doesn't even work. I mean, that's not the world we're trying to create. Like, as long as there's an enemy,
right.
then that polarizes and perpetuates the core problem, which is that
Yeah.
a lack of understanding. I think it may take until the 2 year of 2027, which is such a significant year in human design. February 15th, we start the new Cross of the Sleeping Phoenix, ending a 411-year cycle. My daughter's 10th grade English class is reading Lord of the Flies. And, I have to do English homework with her. And it's, I read it so many years ago that I didn't really remember, but it still remains a fascinating look into what happens as people start to adapt and things become normalized that were unthinkable before. So there's nature, there's nurture, there's so many different factors. And again, the fact
Mhm.
that these, that we trace these different regimes in Iran to Virgo Pisces nodes and events happening, that what does that tell us? What can we take away from that?
Yeah.
Well, Pisces is on the positive side of the spectrum. It is believing in something magical. It is
Miraculous.
manifesting. It
Yeah.
is the spiritual side. It's this sort of,
Visualization.
yeah, it's like something is happening for a reason that you may not know. But then it can also be grifting and gaslighting and narcissism and abuse and all this other stuff too. So we're seeing all of that. And then Virgo is facts and data and information. And so there's this,
Selfless
the,
service.
yeah, and it's media and journalism too. And we see like some incredible journalists and creators rising up. Like I was today, I just
Hmm.
followed this history teacher, this who has like Gen Z and Gen Alpha students, and is like getting so many. I mean, my daughter's classmates are on the corner doing an anti-ice protest every Friday afternoon, and you know, cars going by. So Gen Z and Gen Alpha kids are getting very politically and historically aware. With that, if you want to read more about the kind of deeper exploration that we did on some of the transits that are happening, and you don't yet have our 2026 horoscope book, we now have a March sale, 30% off any format of the books and planners, whether digital or paperback, with the code ASTRO30. So get yourself a copy of that. Um, we also are doing readings. We have some openings for astrology readings. If you want to get your chart read by one of us, we have some openings in our calendar again. And we have loved the people that we've met. So astrostyle.com/readings to get yourself booked with one of us to really, because even though the world seems so out of our control, your life still, as I've been watching, I've been
Hmm.
watching Love Story with John F. Kennedy Jr. and Carolyn Bassett's story, and remembering being in New York in 1999 when they were, before they died. I even met JFK Jr. I contributed an illustration to a book that was created by George Magazine. That was his
I just found
magazine.
that book when I was
Oh, you
cleaning
still
and
have it? Oh
rearranging.
my
Yeah, yeah, I
gosh.
have it.
Oh,
Yeah.
take a picture of it because
Yeah.
I got to go to the book launch party at Bloomingdale's June 10th, 1999, 6 weeks before he died. And he was on his crutches, and it was in this railroad car type of
Oh, I remember
restaurant in
that.
Bloomingdale's, Latrine Blue, and there's narrow hallway. Almost bumped into him, and he was walking on his crutches with his foot in front of him. So I literally almost kicked him in his broken
He
leg.
he
That's my
was on the
JFK Jr.
crutches when
story.
he was flying the plane, right? That was
Yeah, I
one of
think
the
he had just gotten
problems.
off of him, but he was an overconfident Sag. He has his new pilot license, who's new to his license. And I guess Carolyn Bassett's sister came late, so they left too late at night. I was
Oh, wow.
overconfident about the recovery. So I was going like, what if I had kicked him? It would taking him longer to recover. But
Wow.
why am I saying this is because looking back and being nostalgic about things, it's like I realize now, like when I was watching it, I was like, oh my God, that was 26 years ago, 27 years ago. How on earth did all that time pass by? It seems like yesterday. How did we have an astrology career that's lasted this long? I mean, knock on wood, but what I realize is like it's because you have to take your life in the big moments and the little moments. Like we went through so many things. 1999 was the dot-com crash. A couple years later was September 11th. We went through all of those things, but you have to also keep living and designing your life. You cannot stop living or lose
Yeah.
hope. And I think the people of Iran demonstrate that for us more. They are, are we really, I'm sure some terrible stories that we don't even know about are going to come out. And
Especially since we don't even really know what happened to a lot of the
yeah,
protesters and their
no, but the human
bodies. Yeah,
desire
in
to
January.
create and survive no matter what is going on, no matter what the conditions are, the human spirit is very strong. So that's why we show up every week. And even if we are talking about geopolitics a lot on here, on our website, you can always just read your horoscope. It's more personal, day to day. Also, in our books, we have world events in our big book. And then we also have what's happening for you every sign, because you're still a human being living, maybe you want love, career, whatever
Yeah.
your focus is.
Thank you for tuning in and listening. And we'll drop the link in the show notes for the 30% off the horoscope guides and readings with us. And we'll have an announcement soon about something really cool that we've been cooking up to. But we're going to wait another week or two for that to tell you. Some of you already heard us talking about that on Vision Board, but we'll just leave a little bit of mystery in the air.
Yes,
And
Mercury retrograde.
hold on tight for this
Happy eclipse
eclipse.
week.
Yeah, may this eclipse bring some really beautiful new openings in your personal life, even if the world around you is crazy, and some reunions with people from Mercury retrograde who you love and adore. So we'll be back next week and with you on Instagram in between. So bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to AstroTwins Radio. If today's episode gave you an aha moment, we'd be over the moon if you left us a 5-star review. It helps fellow astrology lovers find us. And make sure to hit subscribe and follow us on iTunes and Spotify so you never miss an episode. Want the full visual experience? You can also watch the video version on our YouTube at AstroTwins-TV. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at AstroTwins and head over to astrostyle.com to read your free daily, weekly, and monthly horoscope that we write for you with love. Until next time, move with intention and let the universe meet you there.